Hi, Tim Cant here, and in this video we're going to look at making bass sounds with WavTool's Wavetable Synth. This will help us learn about Wavetable Synth's basic functionality, give us some useful sounds that we can use in our projects, and provide us with some interesting jumping off points for developing our own sounds. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. We'll begin by adding a new MIDI track, and if we double click the track header, we can see in the chain editor that the Wavetable Synth is already there by default. If we arm the track, we can play the synth either using a connected MIDI controller or with your QWERTY keyboard. Now if we open the device panel and select the Wavetable Synth, we can see its parameters. Wavetable Synth has two sound generating components, oscillator A and oscillator B. Currently, only oscillator A is activated. Let's use it to make a simple house music style bass sound. Currently, when we play the synth, we get a pure sawtooth tone, which is a great starting point, but it doesn't sound particularly pleasant as is. We can use Wavetable Synth's filter to shape the sound. As we turn down the filter cutoff frequency, the sound gets progressively dulled. We can make a more interesting sound if we have Wavetable Synth move this parameter for us automatically. The filter is in low pass mode, which means that with the filter turned down, all but the lowest frequencies are filtered out. We're going to use a modulation source to adjust this parameter for us. A simple type of modulation source is an envelope, and Wavetable Synth has 4 envelopes. Envelope 1 already has a job assigned to it by default, which is controlling the synth's amplitude level, which means its volume level. So let's use envelope 2 to modulate the filter cutoff frequency. First, we need to tell Wavetable Synth we want envelope 2 to adjust the filter cutoff frequency for us. We do this by dragging from env2 onto the freak knob. Now when we play a note, we can see the filter moving in real time. With these default settings, we've already got a simple bass sound, and we can adjust this sound using envelope 2's parameters. Turning up the attack knob makes the filter open more slowly, which sounds like this. Adjusting the decay knob controls how quickly the filter closes, and that sounds like this. The sustain knob sets the level that the envelope settles at when we hold a note. As this is assigned to the filter, this will control how open the filter is. The level knob controls the overall amount of the modulation. So if we turn this down, the filter doesn't open so far. The release knob controls how quickly the envelope closes after the key is released, but this isn't going to have much of an effect right now. Why is that? Well, if you remember earlier, I said that envelope 1 is already assigned to the synth's amplitude level by default. This means that when I release a note, the amplitude level closes pretty quickly, and the sound is silenced before we can hear the effect of the filter envelope closing. We have our filtered sawtooth bass sound, and we can tweak the filter envelope to get a sound that's just right. There's one more thing that we should do though, and that's set the number of voices to 1. This means that we can't play more than one note at once, which is something you typically want to avoid with a bass patch. A sawtooth bass sound is great for house music, and you can see an example of this kind of bass sound in action in the video Making a House Track in WavTool, which is linked in the video description. Before we make any further changes to the sound, we can save it using the Save Preset button. We can get a techno-style bass sound by adjusting the oscillator's wave shape. Currently oscillator A is set to the saw square wavetable, which means that using the wavetable position slider, we can morph the oscillator shape from a saw to a square. And you can see the oscillator waveform change as we do this. If we open the filter up, we can compare the unfiltered versions of these sounds. Without getting into the science too much, the sawtooth is great for buzzier basses and the square is good for rounder sounds. Let's close the filter, tweak the patch to get the right feel, and again we can save it. Now we've made the simplest bass sounds, let's make something slightly more sophisticated. We can initialize the synth by deleting it in the chain editor and adding another instance using the Add Device button. This time we're going to add oscillator B into the mix to make a more complex sound. We activate oscillator B by clicking its Enable button. As both oscillator A and B have the same default settings, they're outputting exactly the same signal, so this just makes the synth's output louder, which isn't particularly useful. However, if we adjust the tuning of the oscillators so they're not playing exactly the same pitch, we get some interesting results. We can adjust the tuning of the oscillators using the transpose knob, and if we hold shift when we adjust this knob, we can fine tune it. I'm going to set oscillator A to minus 0.2 semitones and oscillator B to plus 0.2 semitones. This gives us a D&B style Reese synth, and when we play a sustain note, you can hear the sound has a rhythmic quality caused by the detuned oscillators beating. Now, if we turn down the filter cutoff frequency, we get a smoother Reese, which is useful in many styles of music, including jungle, techno, pop, and R&B. However, there's an important improvement we can make to this sound. Currently the filter cutoff frequency is fixed, which means that no matter what note we play, it stays the same. This patch will sound better if we make the filter follow the note played. To do this, drag the pitch modulation source onto the filter cutoff frequency. Now the filter will follow the note played and give us a more consistent sound. We can adjust the filter cutoff frequency and resonance, which emphasizes the filter cutoff, to get the right balance of weight and bite. Again, this patch works best with the voices value of 1, and don't forget to save the patch. Let's make one more sound, an 808 sub, which is useful for trap, jungle and pop amongst other genres. With a fresh Wavetable synth, set the oscillator A wavetable to basic basics. This gives us a simple sine tone. This sound is just a fundamental frequency with no rich harmonics like the sawtooth and square, so filtering it isn't going to be very useful here. Instead, we're going to use pitch modulation to make this sound. Assign envelope 2 to oscillator A's transpose parameter. So this time, instead of controlling the filter, envelope 2 is going to affect the oscillator's pitch. Let's make the pitch modulation less intense by setting envelope 2's level to 0.42. Set the decay to 155 milliseconds so that the pitch drops more quickly. We also want the amplitude of the sound to drop, so select envelope 1, which as we know is set up to control that by default, and set the sustain to 0.44. Again, set the voices to 1, and we have a simple 808 sound. It's not particularly banging though, so let's beef it up with some distortion. In the Add Device panel, select the Distortion category, add an Overdrive 125, and route the Wavetable synth through it. Now that's more like it. You can adjust the amount of overdrive using the pre-knob, and the effects output using the post-knob. So, here we've seen how to make house and techno basses, D&B and jungle Reeses, and a trap 808. This is just scratching the surface of what's possible with Wavetable Synth. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, please subscribe, and until I see you again, have fun!